All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to Bristol's very own Channel 591. I appreciate everybody who decided to tune in today. As you can see, we're here again with our next activity for today, which is going to be interesting history. So there's some fun stuff throughout history I thought I could share with you guys. Let's take this more as a learning and just kind of some cool things that I'm sure you probably didn't know. Or maybe you did and you'll sit there and go, I already knew that. But anyway, let me get that started for you. I'll pull some fun stuff up. And thank you as always for tuning in to Bristol's very own Channel 591. Your hostess with the mostest, Adam. It's just me today, so bear with me. Alright, 1 second. And It's not exactly how I wanted to do things. I prefer for me. There we go. I'm on the right side. Okay, so you can see me, and then I'll be presenting this. Some interesting stuff about history. Let me just make sure I can get this up correctly. Sorry, it takes a lot to run a radio show. Appreciate your patience, everybody. And it should be good. All right. So first thing I'll be presenting to you guys. Turkeys were once worshipped like gods. While turkey is currently America's favorite part of Thanksgiving meal, in 300 BC, these big birds were hurled by the Mayan people as vessels of the gods and were honored as such, so much that they were domesticated to have roles in religious rites. They were symbols of power and prestige and can be found everywhere in Maya iconography and archaeology. So if you ever see some Mayan depictions, you might find a turkey. 2. Paul Revere never actually shouted, "The British are coming." While everyone knows the story of Revere's famous ride in which he said to have warned colonial militia of the approaching enemy by yelling, "The British are coming," this is actually false. According to History.com, the operation was meant to be quiet and stealthy since British troops were hiding in the Massachusetts countryside. Also, colonial Americans still considered themselves to be British. So I guess it'd be kind of confusing if they said the Long Islanders are coming. It's a bunch of Long Islander people. The Olympics used to award medals for art. In the 1912 to 1948 Olympic Games held competitions in fine arts. Medals were given for literature, architecture, sculpture, painting, and music. Naturally, the art created was required to be Olympic themed. According to the founder of the modern Olympics, Pierre de Frede, the addition of the arts was necessary because the ancient Greeks used to hold art festivals alongside the games. Before the art events were eventually removed, 151 medals were awarded. One time, 100 imposters claimed to be Marie Antoinette's dead son. We got a cute little picture of him. After the French Revolution, 8-year-old Louis, the 17th, was imprisoned and then never seen public ever again. His parents were executed in 1793, and afterward, he was horrifically abused, neglected, and left isolated in a prison cell in the Paris Temple. In 1795, he died of tuberculosis at 10 years old. His body was buried in secret in a mass grave. Years later, dozens of men came forward claiming to be him because a Bourbon restoration was a possibility, and a successful claimant would then potentially find himself on the throne of France. So after the French Revolution, people decided that they were going to try and come out and say that they were, in fact, the heir to the throne in case anybody ever came forward and reinstilled the throne. Napoleon was once attacked by a horde of bunnies. We got a cool picture of him. He's got his tight pants on. The emperor had requested that a rabbit hunt be arranged for himself and his men. His chief of staff set it up and had men round up reportedly 3,000 rabbits for the occasion. When the rabbits were released from their cages, the hunt was ready to go. At least that was the plan. But bunnies charged towards Bonaparte and his men in a vicious and unstoppable onslaught, and we were taught that Waterloo was the conqueror's greatest defeat. And we were taught Waterloo was his greatest defeat. Women were once banned from smoking in public. In 1908, New Yorker Katie Mulcahy, I can't say her name, was arrested for striking a match against the wall and lighting a cigarette with it. Why? Because this is a violation of the Sullivan Ordinance, a city law banning women and only women from smoking in public. During her hearing at the district court, Macaulay argued that her right to smoke cigarettes. She argued about her right to smoke cigarettes in public. She was fined $5. 2 weeks later, the Sullivan Ordinance was vetoed by New York City's mayor. So now women can smoke in public. The government literally poisoned alcohol during the Prohibition. During the Prohibition in the United States, the U.S. government literally poisoned alcohol when people continued to consume alcohol despite its banning. Law officials got frustrated and decided to try a different kind of deterrent: death. They ordered the poisoning of industrial alcohol manufacturers in the U.S., which were products regularly stolen by bootleggers. By the end of the Prohibition in 1933, the federal poisoning program is estimated to have killed at least 10,000 people just to stop the spread of alcohol. That's insane. Captain Morgan actually existed. So if anybody here is a fan of Captain Morgan, now that I'm 21, I can legally say that I am a fan of Captain Morgan. Yes, face of well-loved rum brand was totally a real guy. He was a Welsh privateer who fought alongside the English against the Spanish in the Caribbean in 1660s to 1670s. His name was Henry, and he was knighted by King Charles II of England. His exact birth date is unknown, but it was sometime around 1635. He died in Jamaica in 1688, apparently very rich. So thank you, Captain Morgan, for your contributions to every teenage party, as well as fighting the Caribbean. Using forks used to be seen as sacrilegious. What? The forks, the widely used eating utensils, were once seen as blasphemous. They were first introduced in Italy in the 11th century. These spiked spaghetti twirling instruments were seen as an offense to God. And why, do you ask? Because they were artificial hands and as such were considered to be sacrilegious. I remember seeing something about this. The forks originally came out for spaghetti, but before that, it was seen as an act against God because of the fact that your hands were what you primarily ate with. And if God gave you hands to use, so why wouldn't you use them? The Titanic owners never said the ship was unsinkable. I guess that's kind of good for them, seeing as an iceberg really did some damage. But despite what James Cameron's iconic 1997 film may have you believe, the owners never said that it could never sink. Historian Richard Howell said the population as a whole were unlikely to have thought the Titanic as a unique, unsinkable ship before its maiden voyage. 11. There were more than 600 plots to kill Fidel Castro. How unlikable do you have to be for 600 plans to kill you? Damn. Yes, 600. The Cuban dictator was targeted to be killed by a large range of foes, including political opponents, criminals, and even the United States, among many others. Tactics included everything from exploding cigar to a poisoned diving suit. Yes, they really tried to take out Fidel. Cleopatra was not Egyptian. Despite what you may believe, the last queen of Egypt wasn't born in Egypt. As historians can tell, Cleopatra the Seventh, that's her formal name, was Greek. She was the descendant of Alexander the Great's Macedonian general Ptolemy. Not great with pronouncing things. Pope Gregory IV declared a war on cats. I'm glad Pope Francis doesn't do anything like that. So, Pope Gregory IV declared a war on cats. In the 13th century, he said that black cats were instruments of Satan. Because of this belief, he ordered the extermination of these felines throughout Europe. However, this plan backfired as it resulted in an increase in population of plague-carrying rats. So the cats normally ate the rats that were causing issues. And as far as I'm concerned, I think black cats are cute. So I'm glad that no one has to kill them today. Mary actually had a little lamb. Good for her. Everyone knows the nursery rhyme, Mary had a little lamb. But you probably didn't know this was based on a true story. Her name was Mary Sawyer. She was an 11-year-old girl who lived in Boston and one day was followed to school by her pet lamb. In the late 1860s, she helped raise money for an old church by selling wool from the lamb. Aw, that's very sweet. Richard Nixon was a great musician. Yeah, he wasn't a very good liar, so good he can play music. The 37th president of the United States and the only president to resign from office actually was an extremely talented musician. He played 5 instruments in total: piano, saxophone, clarinet, accordion, and violin. Lyndon B. Johnson gave interviews from the bathroom. This, for lack of a better word, unapologetic president gave interviews while using the toilet. Presidential biographer Doris Kearns Goodwin describes the impetus. He just didn't want the conversation to stop. So instead of saying, hey, one moment, I gotta go use the bathroom, he instead continued an entire interview. Ketchup was sold in the 1830s as medicine. I really love medicine on my burgers, I'll tell you that. Forget ibuprofen. In the 1830s, when it came to popular medicine, ketchup was all the rage. In 1834, it was sold as a cure for indigestion by an Ohio physician named John Cook. It wasn't popularized as a condiment until the late 19th century. The more you know. Oh, so this one I told you guys already, and we also had Abraham Lincoln on our show to say it himself. But President Abraham Lincoln is in the Wrestling Hall of Fame. Before the 16th president took office, Abraham Lincoln was declared a wrestling champion. The 6'4" president had only one loss among his 300 contests. He earned a reputation for this in New Salem, Illinois, as an elite fighter. Eventually, he earned his county's wrestling championship. Uh-oh. This one's a little controversial. The 4th of July isn't the real Independence Day. July 4th is not the real American Independence Day. It is actually July 2nd, because this is when the Second Constitutional Congress in Philadelphia actually voted to approve the Resolution of Independence. July 4th, though, is when the Congress adopted the official Declaration of Independence. And most didn't even sign that until August. Abraham Lincoln was a licensed bartender. This one I didn't know, and especially having him on a show, I wish he would have talked about it. But besides being a wrestling champ, Lincoln was also a licensed bartender in 1833. The 16th president opened up a bar called Berry and Lincoln with his friends William F. Berry in New Salem, Illinois. The shop was eventually closed when Berry, an alcoholic, consumed the most of the shop's supply. So there's one man who just came in and drank all of Lincoln's alcohol. John Adams was the first president to live in the White House. While the White House was under construction during Washington's term, he never lived there. It wasn't until John Adams took office that presidents lived there. Interestingly enough, George Washington is the only president to date who has not lived in the White House. The first face on the $1 bill was not George Washington. The first president was not the first face on the $1 bill. The first face to appear on this currency was Salmon P. Chase. The first $1 bill was issued during the Civil War in 1862. Chase was the Secretary of Treasury at that time and was also the designer of the country's first bank notes. '23. Thomas Edison did not invent the light bulb. I got a picture of Thomas here. Well, Edison did have an astonishing 1,093 patents. The majority of these were not of his own invention. He stole most of them. While he did land the patent for the light bulb in 1880, the real inventor was actually Warren de la Rue, a British astronomer and chemist who actually created the very first light bulb 40 years before Edison. Edison was known to steal a lot of things, and he also quarreled a lot with Nikola Tesla. But that's a story for another time. And Betsy Ross didn't design and sew the first American flag. At least the only proof we have of this is from Ross's grandson, William Canby, who claimed that in 1870 his Gram had the idea. The real creator was more likely to be Francis Hopkins from New Jersey, who signed the Declaration of Independence and also designed many seals for the U.S. government. Cars weren't invented in the United States. So that's a scary looking dude. He's got quite the mustache. I don't even know how he eats. Oh well. Yeah, I keep mine above my lips, but to each their own. Who knows? Maybe it gets the ladies. No, it wasn't Henry Ford's Model T in 1908. The first car was actually created in the 19th century when European engineers Carl Benz and Emile Levasseur were working on the automobile inventions. Benz patented the first automobile in 1886. George Washington opened a whiskey distillery after his presidency. So, Abraham Lincoln, he owned a bar. George Washington, he made whiskey. These presidents like their alcohol. Apparently, being the first president of the United States wasn't enough for George Washington in his lifetime. After his term, Washington opened a whiskey distillery. By 1799, Washington's distillery was the largest in the country, producing 11,000 gallons of unaged whiskey. After the president's death, the business was no more, however. This picture doesn't want to load. Let me see if I can get it. Nope. The picture is actually, this is the actual picture they uploaded. Ronald Reagan was a believer in astrology. Yes, Ronald Reagan was deeply interested in astrology. Both he and Nancy were actually, and if you were curious, Ronald Reagan was an Aquarius. Though the cosmos never influenced any policy decisions on his part, he reassured. Young George Washington could definitely tell a lie. There is a myth about young George Washington that states that the president, when he was a boy, cut down his father's apple tree with a hatchet. When his father confronted him, he said, "I cannot tell a lie." Yeah, that never happened. It first appeared in an autobiography of Washington, where the writer later admitted he was just trying to display the president's virtuous nature. So that whole story was a lie. George Washington never had wooden teeth. Now, I know there are some of you out there who were doing trivia one day with me on presidents, and I did actually say George Washington did have wooden teeth. That was later redacted by Emily Putter when she informed me that that was a lie. Many myths about Washington exist, but one of the most prevalent stories has to be about his teeth. It's widely believed that Washington wore wooden dentures. This is not the case at all. While Washington did have numerous dental problems and did use dentures, wood as a material was never used. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died on the same day. On July 4th, 1826, both U.S. Presidents John Adams and Thomas Jefferson passed away. Within 5 hours of each other, Within 5 hours of each other, John Adams and each other. Crazy. They were once fellow patriots turned adversaries, and they were also the last surviving members of the original American revolutionaries. Columbus didn't actually discover America. No, this European explorer did not discover America. Columbus was 500 years late. In fact, it was Norse explorer Leif Erikson who landed on American shores during the 10th century. Erikson could be considered the first European to discover America. So, here's another thing about Columbus. He actually didn't really reach America. He ended up in the Caribbean. And not only that, Columbus wasn't really much of a patriotic man. He actually did a lot of horrible things while in the Caribbean. Really took advantage of the natives, and his crew did not treat them well at all. Though I won't get into detail, the way that the natives described them was closer to pirates raiding villages when they arrived. So, 32. Witches weren't actually burned at the stake in Salem. The witch trials in Salem, Massachusetts lasted between February 1692 and May 1693. Nearly 200 people were accused of practicing witchcraft, including the homeless, the elderly, and a 4-year-old girl. The majority were jailed and some were hanged, but none of these ever got burned alive. So no burning witches at the stake. Benjamin Franklin never thought turkey should be the national bird. While writing to his daughter in 1784, Benjamin Franklin was complaining about the bald eagle being chosen as the United States national symbol. He said that the bald eagle had a bad moral character. He said turkeys would be a better idea. He was joking. He actually didn't think the national bird should be a turkey. Marie Antoinette never said, "Let them eat cake." There's a lovely picture of her. A version of the quote originally came from an autobiography of Jean-Jacques Rousseau, where it was mentioned a princess said this phrase. It was later to be attributed to Antoinette, though it is highly unlikely she actually said that. And number 35, I'll leave you guys off with this one. Walt Disney didn't draw Mickey Mouse. Before we even get this started, Walt Disney was actually very well known for stealing other people's artwork and claiming that he came up with original ideas. Instead, he was more of the first person to really project and put things out there. Walt Disney wasn't a very creative man, and a lot of his work shows to that, and you can see a lot of different stuff that he had stolen. While Walt Disney did have the idea of Mickey Mouse and also provided the voice, the imagery was created by an animator, U.B. Iwerks. I can't really pronounce his name. He came up with all of the iconic features. You won't look at the adorable mouse the same again. So we have Mickey Mouse and Minnie dressed up in their best. And thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate everyone who tuned in to check out the show. Give me 1 second. So, with that, I'm going to leave you guys off. Some of you I still have to grab meal orders from, so I will be coming to hunt you down because I do want you all to eat. But thank you for tuning in to Bristol's very own Channel 591. I appreciate all of you. And please stay safe. I don't know what the weather is going to be out today, but there will be walking club at 2:15 if anyone's interested. So, anyway, take care, have a lovely day, and I'll see you all at 1:20 for interview with the resident. If they want to disclose themselves, they're more than happy to, but I do like to keep it a surprise. So, I'll see you all later.